Are you ready for more video game adaptations?
Can you grab my badonkadonk?
Huh? You what now?
Well, we're getting a whole bunch of them. Thanks to Amazon Prime Video's new animated anthology series, Secret Level, we're getting a whole bunch of different video games as singular, shorter episodes. Some of these episodes run from 6 minutes to 15 minutes, and I think some maybe even a little bit longer, and even a big chunk of those run times come from credits and stuff, so they're pretty short, and so they're pretty easy to watch. And so right now we have the first half of the series released already. The second half is coming next week, December 17th. So if you're watching this video currently and all the rest of the episodes are out, sorry, the second half of those episodes I have not covered yet. So this is just kind of a up to or a so far review of Secret Level. Now, to give you a heads up of how this video is going to work, I'm going to talk about each individual episode, kind of give you simple thoughts so that way we're not running through and nitpicking each and every detail of each episode. But I'm going to give it an episode review score, so that will be, X out of 10 that you're going to disagree with at the end of the episode. That's just going to be kind of a generalized review score. And then there will also be a second review score, a series potential score, and this score is going to essentially be what I believe would be the potential of this episode, or in this way, or in this kind of format, being extended into a series. Not necessarily will this happen, but should it or could it, in terms of the quality or the idea or the concept of the episode. Could this episode work as a longer series or film? And so that's what this video is going to be. So without further ado, let's hop straight into the first episode.
Who are you?
So first off, I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons guy. I played like 12 hours of Baldur's Gate, but I kind of struggle with the CRPGs. I don't know why. I guess I'm just stupid, but it's just hard for me to lock in on those. But going on this one, I don't really have a lot of connections to Dungeons and Dragons. All my friends play, all my friends want me to play, and I think I would enjoy it. Did this episode make me want to play Dungeons and Dragons more? Maybe. I thought the first couple of minutes of this episode were a little slow. The weird thing is there are a lot of really photorealistic kind of textures and elements to this, but it enters this weird uncanny valley of where it's like things just look a little off. And this is where some of these characters, I'm afraid to say what they are or what I think they are, because I don't know what's what's allowed or what would end up becoming offensive language for some of this. But some of this stuff just looks really weird. Some of these characters, you look at them and like, man, they're rendered incredibly, but there's something about the way they're proportioned or the way that they animate and emote that just took me out of the episode almost each and every time. But other than that, I think direction wise, this episode feels like your most traditional television series, whether it be a modern film or TV or internet series. It kind of felt like that same structure of a TV show. There's not a lot of, I think it'd be probably mean to say there's no artistic merit to it, but there's not a lot of creativity in terms of the way that the information in this story is presented to you. It's very traditional. Now, which makes sense because it is D&D, and D&D storytelling is pretty traditional. You're not going to do anything so far out there that doesn't feel right in a fantasy lore type setting. But I will say the latter half of the episode hooked me a little bit. I think the action was pretty interesting. It was cool to see some of these different powers from these different classes. It felt like this would be a really good, or this is what we see typically from non-gameplay like trailers for video games. It's like, hey, we're giving you a hint of what these characters or these classes can or can't do, and that's what it felt like. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think the end of the episode is actually much better than the beginning of it. But I think for me, it's good, but it's not great. But it did enough to engage me towards the end. And so I think that the episode score will probably be a little bit lower. But with this being D&D, and if we're talking about a series potential score of how good could this series be, You got to rate it pretty high because D&D is a storytelling platform. And so I think something like this would be better with a little bit more time to breathe, more time to know the characters, because that's what you're doing in D&D anyways. So once again, I think this would work better as a show or work better as a film. But also with the weird Uncanny Valley stuff, this animation style, if that is what was to be used for a long time or a long running show or a film, I don't know if I could look at it for that long. And it's very strange. There's something off about it. I am not an animation expert, so maybe or you could tell me why it looks weird or why it sets me off. But anyways, yeah, so episode score, I'd give it a 6 out of 10, and I think the series potential score, probably a 7 out of 10. It could be pretty good if it locks in its art style a little bit. Listen, the first thing I thought of when I saw it, I was like, wait, am I watching Arcane? Did I start the wrong video? Then I realized, wait, no, I'm in Prime Video, not Netflix, so I can't watch Arcane here. But listen, that art style works perfectly for Sifu. It works really good. But really, what should come to no surprise to anyone who's played Sifu, or even if you've watched Sifu for a little bit, the most impressive thing about this episode is the fight choreography. It is top notch, and it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, there are a couple of action films that might pull some of these things and use some of it in the movies. And so the fight choreography mixed with some really impressive and stunning cinematography, some really great angles. Now Sifu does some of that stuff of where it's gonna move the camera from your traditional third person behind the back angle to a wide side scrolling almost thing, like we've seen in movies like Old Boy. So we see film and video games kind of doing the same thing and inspiring each other back and forth, and so it's kind of cool to see. But yeah, this Sifu episode was awesome. I think Sifu has such a clever concept, and this episode does a pretty good job of kind of taking its own idea of that concept and making its own sort of thing. But it's just really entertaining. It's so easy to follow along. It's a bummer that this episode's only 6 minutes. I think or was it 6 minutes? It's pretty short. I feel like if there is a single complaint that I have to make, which it's weird to make this being a complaint, I feel like we get cheated out a bit at the end of the episode. The episode kind of sets you up for a big boss fight and you don't get the boss fight. I don't know if that was because of a lack of time or budget, or if that was a creative decision. It could easily be any of those. And if it's a creative decision, was that the right decision? Maybe. I don't know. The way that it ends, it works out fine, and it tells a really cool story, and it has a beginning and a middle and an end, and it wraps up nicely. But I would have liked to see that, especially because a lot of Sifu, the video game in particular, is experiencing different enemy types or enemy varieties and having to adjust to those things. And so really, it isn't until the end of this episode that you have an enemy that's going to be kind of different from every other person that you run into. And so I would have loved to see that animated, especially this animation team just killed the episode. I would have loved to see what they've done with that. And so for me, I think the episode is really, really good. And I think for me as well, you could extend this into a series. And if not a series, it could definitely be a film. I don't know. And funny enough, I've been thinking about how you could do a live action version. The challenges of that, of aging and de-aging someone for it, shouldn't be too hard these days, but the budget might not let that happen. But this art style is so good, and it works really well for Sifu, so you could do a full series or film in this, and it be really enjoyable. So yeah, Sifu, the episode score, 8 out of 10, and the series potential score, also an 8 out of 10.
Yet, Elstrom lives.
Now, I played New World quite a bit whenever it first came out. I don't recall much of it. I just remember sitting in Discord calls with friends, just kind of grinding away and, watching YouTube videos in the background. So I don't really remember much of the game, but I don't recall the game feeling like this episode. I don't recall the tone matching the tone of this episode, but that didn't bother me at all. Actually, it was quite a pleasant surprise. Also, another pleasant surprise, I didn't realize Arnold Schwarzenegger was in this. Listen, there's some bits that the main character being Arnold Schwarzenegger made that funnier, because it's like, okay, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger and this is just ridiculous and absurdist. But at other times, you're like, okay, I wish this may be a better voice actor, someone with a little bit more nuance or detail to his performance. But with that being said, I can let most of that go, considering this episode is just a slapstick comedy. It's just goofy and ridiculous, and legitimately, I think it's genuinely funny. I don't know how many things in the world out there, in terms of whether it be video game related or even just most movies these days, most of them aren't genuinely funny. There's almost a Looney Tunes-esque quality to this, though it's much more gruesome and a lot more violent. But it is, maybe, after watching all of the episodes now, I still think it is maybe the prettiest episode that we have with all of these. That makes sense because it's New World and this is an Amazon series. But there feels like there's so much money pumped into this thing. It feels like there's so much time and love put into it. The character renderings are incredible. The environments are really pretty. But it's really well done. This episode is it's so refreshing, especially watching a whole bunch of very overly serious things and then just really dark things. So I absolutely loved this movie, or not movie, but this episode. It's almost like it's a grittier ReZero, though it's still pretty funny. But yeah, I think the episode's great. Could this work as a series? Absolutely. The only thing that you maybe would change is it not being Arnold Schwarzenegger as the main character. It's one of those things of can you listen to that kind of performance for 9-10 hours in a series, or 3 hours in a film? 3 hours in a film may be a little bit more manageable, but it's such a fun story, and the way that this episode kind of sets itself up for a whole different kind of series, though you could still follow the same characters and it'd be really great. So yeah, episode score for New World is a 9 out of 10, with the series potential score being a 7 out of 10. Could be higher, but you might have to change some things. All right, Unreal Tournament. So, at first I was like, okay, this is a bit meh. It's pretty. There's nothing really bad about it, but I felt as if, okay, this is a little bit by the numbers. Especially now, it might be my fault that I binge watched most of these all at the same time. And so I kind of was over it at a certain point, but I need to give credit where credit is due. Of the secret level episodes, the Unreal Tournament episode is the most video gamey of all of the episodes. It feels the most like a video game. It's pretty impressive to find a way to turn an arena shooter, and take those elements of arena shooter video games and make that into a narrative, element of an episode. That was pretty clever. I think that worked really well, and you're using actual voice lines from the game and to actual elements from the game. Even things of picking up weapons feels very video gamey in this, and so that is a really clever take on that. I think whoever came up with that stuff should be given all the flowers. That's really good, well done. But once the novelty of that wore off, I was pretty ready to move on from this episode. It's fine. I think the story of, you know, robot revolution has been done a whole bunch, and not to say that these other stories haven't been done a million times over, but I don't know if there's anything else super unique about it that made me be like, okay, well, I want to see more of that. But I will say there's one thing that I was really impressed by as well, outside of, hey, this is a video gamey sort of episode and we're using video game elements in this episode. I don't know how the studio made the robot character models feel like they were angry, or look like they were angry or disappointed or determined in their faces when they don't have faces. They literally have one little light bar. They look like the front of a Cybertruck. Like, it's really interesting. Like, have you ever looked at a Cybertruck and thought, hey, that Cybertruck is mad? Like, you probably haven't. Those things don't generate emotion. And so they did a really good job of finding a way to add character and emotion into robots that don't have like humanoid faces. And so well done. But for me, the episode score for Unreal Tournament is a 5 out of 10. It's fine. The series potential score, who needs? I don't know if anyone needs that. 2 out of 10.
What is my purpose?
Eat or be eaten. Nice.
This episode is hilarious. Even though there's really nothing funny in it, it is very dark and serious. It is the biggest departure from the source material. It takes that idea of a gritty reboot to the nth degree. It gets more grotesque and violent as it goes on, which actually it's pretty compelling. Like, it's fun to watch this story because you're also trying to figure out, okay, how are they making this Pac Man? How is this Pac Man at all? I'm trying to lock in, and really, at first watch, I didn't realize how Pac Man-y it actually was and what the thing was trying to tell me. But I realized now then at the end, I was like, wait, I'm an idiot. I viewed this thing the entirely wrong way. And yeah, this is a lot more like Pac Man than I had anticipated. Now, does it make sense that this would be your adaptation for the cute, colorful, vibrant game that is Pac Man? No, it doesn't make any sense at all. But that's kind of fun. Like, that's the thing that makes this interesting. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this Pac Man episode was the thing that sold this series being a thing. It's like, hey, we have this idea for Pac Man. We have this idea for something that's completely out of, left field. They're like, yo, let's see that. We will never get this greenlit as a full show on its own or a full series on its own. Let's do it. So this feels like old Wild West YouTube, a little bit of like, hey, we're showing you this weird reimagined thing, and it works. It's fun. It's a great time. So you know what? Episode score, I would give Pac Man a 7 out of 10. Series potential score, I gave it originally a 3 out of 10, but I think I'd bump that up to a 4 or 5. Like, it is pretty cool, especially if you're able to add a little bit more emotion into some other elements and not just one. But yeah, I think it's great, worth a watch. It is the thing that will probably bring you to secret level more than anything else if you don't care about the other video games.
Power must be controlled. Fear forged into obedience.
All right, Warhammer 40,000. Now here we go. This is the good stuff. Listen, as a new Warhammer fan, I've said this time and time again, I'm really new to the hobby, but I'm enjoying it. I can't tell you whether or not this feels perfectly true and to the tone and the lore of Warhammer. Though I've been reading a bit more and been listening to a little bit more, and I know that Warhammer really is just a platform for storytelling, and it doesn't really matter. Like, there could be different types of tones throughout this universe, whether it be horror or your more military stuff, or with things like Eisenhorn, which is more like a noir detective series. And then Caiaphas Cain ends up kind of playing like an episode of The Office a little bit, set in the Warhammer universe. Like, I can't tell you if this fully is true to those things, but what it does really well is solidify just what an absolute legend Titus is becoming in this universe. With Space Marine 2, he's already like, holy crap, this guy is is kind of a boss. And then this episode, I think, is just a really great introduction to the character Titus and to the Warhammer universe for anyone who hasn't watched or read or played any Warhammer things. And so I would recommend this episode to anyone who's interested in Warhammer but have not had the time to get into the tabletop game or the books or the audiobooks or whatever, all of those things. If you haven't had time, check this out. The plot is pretty simple. You may be a little confused at what's happening in this, but that's okay. Just watch it, go for the ride, see if you like it, because, man, the action is absolutely incredible. It is so in your face. It is so gory. It's just shocking in all the best ways, as well as there is actual emotion and character. I don't know if you want to say growth, but like there's cool character defining things in this episode that is just really fun to watch. And I will say, and it has to be said, while as I'm filming this, it was 2 days ago that Henry Cavill announced that they have greenlit the Warhammer series at Amazon. And so if this is going to be a lot of people's first time dipping their toes into Warhammer leading up to that series, it's a great start. It's so good. There's just so much swagger and bombastic action and violence in this short episode that I could see it creating a lot more Warhammer fans. And I think it's going to get people interested in what you could see from, different Ultramarines or what we could see from Henry Cavill's upcoming series. And so, one, we're getting the Amazon live action series. It's happening. It's going to be a good thing. So that should be its own, my episode score isn't about that. My episode, my episode score is a 9 out of 10. It's great. It's really good. But my series potential score is not referring to the Henry Cavill series that's coming up. But the series score for this animated version of Titus, 10 out of 10. I want more. I want to see more. We're probably going to get more just in the next Space Marine video game if we get that. But I would be more than happy to watch more Titus, more of this studio making this Titus and what they do. Their depiction of chaos and stuff like that is just insane. This thing's stunning. As a Warhammer fan, I couldn't have asked for more.
It's the ultimate challenge, Crossfire! Crossfire! You get caught up in the...
Crossfire. I don't know anything about Crossfire. I believe it's an Xbox series, but I don't quite remember. I probably should have looked it up before recording, but whatever. Listen, after watching this episode, I still feel like I don't know anything about Crossfire. Really, I didn't take a whole lot away from this series. It feels kind of like your bog standard military, mystery type of thing. But listen, it's not bad. Like the I'm not the bad guy sort of everyone quoting that and using that as sort of a mantra. I think is an interesting concept of, hey, no one thinks they're the bad guy. But I really didn't take a whole lot away from this episode. I have to give credit where credit is due, though. I mean, like the human renderings or the renderings of the people look great. The lighting is pretty incredible throughout, and the weather effects are stunning. Like, it looks super realistic. The way that they do rain, whether it be rain being blown across in like hurricane style winds, or rain just on a window, or rain on like a windshield. The textures of that are really great, and the reflections that they get off of a wet road are really impressive and look super realistic. But outside of really the weather and the lighting, I don't know whether or not there's a reason. I don't know whether or not there's a reason for this to be an animated series. Like, you can't do that wind and rain through a full movie or a full episode. I don't know whether or not there's a reason for this to continue. Like, you could do a whole lot of this and it doesn't have to be Crossfire. There's nothing about this to me that feels super video gamey, but I don't know. The episode's fine. It's just kind of vanilla, for lack of a better term. Would there be potential for a series? Yeah, because it's every military thing in the world. So yeah, sure, why not? Go for it. But I don't know if it would be particularly unique or interesting as a series. Episode score, 4 out of 10. It's okay. Serious potential score, 5 out of 10. Who cares?
Let's make some money.
All right, I don't know if it's the Keanu of it all, but man, this feels like the most expensive or the highest production value episode of all of the secret level episodes. This is pretty darn good. From just how good the Keanu character model is to the scale, the speed, the action, it all just feels like premium content. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this, but this might be one of my favorite Keanu Reeves performances ever. If there's ever been a criticism of Keanu, it's that he's a little bit stiff, can be a little expressionless at times. It's what makes him great for characters like Neo or for John Constantine or for John Wick. There's this stoic nature to who he is. That's what makes him great for Point Blank. Like it's great. But with the animation and this character model, they're able to make Keanu as expressive as they want him to be. And he really brings it in the voice acting. He really brings it in his performance. And so, like, I think it works really well. So bringing that extra little bit of expression out of Keanu with a really powerful, I say powerful, but a really bought in performance from Keanu, like, this is awesome. It works really well. Like, Keanu's straight up sending it in this, and he does a great job. And listen, it's great. The action is stellar. Like, you should watch it. Like, there's nothing else I really have to say in terms of like, my praise of it is just overall general praise. I don't know if I can describe anymore why I like it. If I have one negative, and I know I'm going to come off as a bit of a prude or overly sensitive, the only thing that took me out of this episode was the amount of F-bombs that Keanu dropped in a certain sequence. Like, now I know what you're going to say. You're about to be killed by giant robots, or you're trying to be killed by a bunch of robots. What else are you going to do? What else are you going to say? And that's fine. That's a fair argument. But, you know, it could have been grunts. They could have switched it up. It's one of those things where I'm like, man, they could have done something else. Also, it could be, hey, this is true to Keanu's brutish character, who's just kind of not a great guy, it seems. Sort of a bit of a narcissist. So maybe it works, and that's fine. But listen, I'm not actually even really complaining about it. It didn't bother me. It was just something that I noticed, and it kind of pulled me out a little bit. But listen, other than that, it is an absolute banger. And they do enough to lock you into the action in this episode. They do enough to, like, kind of create an intriguing mystery of, okay, well, that's what's actually going on here, to make you wonder the whole episode. And then it also, at the end, gives you this little bit of intrigue of, hey, if you want more, we could give you kind of more, because there's more to this story than we've presented, and that's awesome. So listen, the episode score is a 9 out of 10. Could it be higher? Could it be a 10 out of 10? Probably, and it probably will be for most people. But the serious potential score, 10 out of 10. Give me more of this. I want more now. Please, please, please. So yeah, that's it for Secret Level, the first couple of episodes. We have more episodes coming December 17th, 2024. I don't know if I'm going to do videos on that. We'll see just how I feel as I watch those. But yeah, so this is how I feel so far. Go ahead, tell me what you think about these episodes in the comments. Disagree with me, agree with me. Let me know what you think about all of them. I'd love to hear it. All right, for now, that's it. Take it easy.